a big idea never starts out as a big idea. It always starts out as something that someone is passionate or, inquisitive, they're persistent about it. Being innovative doesn't really equate to having a big idea. They're sort of independent of each other. It's something that I wanted to state before we went into this, but in terms of how legal marketers add value to that process is something that we'll explore in this. Is it a skill set? Is it a process? I don't know, but we'll certainly dive in. And with that, I'll pose my first question to you. And that is, we talked about the characteristics of what defines innovation. Maybe you can talk to the people a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I think we're all going to, weigh in to an extent on each of these questions. But as we start off the discussion with a definition of innovation, I think it's worthwhile to just pause for a second and say, is there a rationale for talking about innovation in today's legal industry? Does it even make sense that all of you are sitting in this room and that you have this panel assembled? And if we really look at essentially the challenges that law firms are up against in this post-Great Recession environment and the ongoing economic and political instability, I think there's certainly a business case for talking about innovation. Law firms continue to see unprecedented levels of change, and maybe people would say, well, the legal industry changes at a glacier pace, and that's probably true. But yet, law firms continue to see much more change and pressure to change today than they have historically, right? So we're seeing intensified competition, consolidation, an oversupply of lawyers, flat demand. Firms are basically facing the challenge of maintaining, even sustaining their current market share and profits, let alone growing that in the future. And so innovation really is a great fundamental opportunity for firms to grow market share, to maintain market share. And in fact, innovation might be required in order for them to do that. And I think Christie's going to talk in a minute about innovation and how it offers an opportunity for differentiation, which is really another way that we can combat these changes in the industry. But in terms of the definition itself, coming back to the core question, we can all look up the definition and, it's the act of introducing something new, and there's all these great ways of redescribing the word innovation. But I think the real question we have to ask ourselves is, what does it really mean in a law firm, right? So how many times have you heard the word innovation used in a meeting and all the partners' eyes glaze over? And how does innovation apply to them? This is a very simple business model. Innovation doesn't necessarily have a place in many lawyers' minds in a law firm. And so my overall message to you on this is that I really believe that when you talk about innovation in your law firms, you need to define it in the context of your firm. What is going to drive value for your firm's clients and value for your firm's lawyers? And those are the opportunities for innovation in your firm. If we start defining innovation as these wonderful ideas, we're going to outsource all routine legal services to India, and we're in a 75 lawyer firm in LA, the value is not necessarily going to be there depending upon the practice. So really framing innovation, the definition of innovation needs to be looked at in terms of delivering value to your clients and to your lawyers.
Well, and I think that, that begs the question, how do you innovate? Who do you ask? Why do it? And the answer is because your clients are doing it. So, and how do you know that they want you to be innovative? And how do you know that it might be helpful if you're actually having a similar mindset? So going back to the definition, for us, at least for my firm, innovation is less about some big quantum leap, like outsourcing, or some weird new thing we're going to do differently than every other law firm. And it's more about just shifting that mindset a little bit. It's a discipline. So it's more about moving in a more collaborative way. Why? Because it's the way our clients are actually conducting their businesses. And I think that there's a fear with lawyers that innovation is like, we've got to come up with some big idea. We've got to be Thomas Edison, right? And the answer is, actually, you don't need to be Thomas Edison. Google is not one guy. It's not one brand new invention. So I think, once you can start to deliver the message that your clients are already doing it, and that it's what they want, and the only way you can get to that is if you actually ask them, right? Everybody I think in this room gets and is pretty clear on you've got to actually figure out what they value before you start down the strategy path. But the reason that so we're doing a mind shift to the extent that we can, and we're starting with what do our clients value, not what do we value, right? We don't exist just to make a profit. We actually exist to have clients. So we start with that. And believe it or not, that is, that is sort of an innovative concept. So,
Alan, you had we talked about how people experience innovation.
Yeah.
And echoing what Mr. Freeborn had been talking about earlier today in terms of, changing the world, when it really got down to it, they weren't Herculean tasks. They were just people that had the courage to do something, a little bit and different. I was wondering if you could elaborate on that.
It becomes very problematic when innovation is about us. When I was at EY Consulting, I spent $1 million developing a service line that would save airlines anywhere from $20 million to $150 million to their bottom line, okay? It was in their maintenance operations. And so we literally traveled the world to go sell this, saying, what a no-brainer, right? You're going to pay us $1 million, $2 million, and you're going to make all this. And we didn't get one taker, not one, okay? Spent $1 million developing it, not one. Why? Because their business cycle was up at the top, and right now we were going to save them money, basically, and it was going to drop to the bottom line. And all they cared about was printing money. All they cared about was generating revenue. It was a bad time. And our solution had some risk associated with it that they just weren't going to be comfortable. And although we could guarantee blah, 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 sold Zippo. I was also responsible for the Y2K initiative at EY, and so I spent about $20,000 doing market research to talk to Fortune 100 companies. How are you going to deal with Y2K? They came back and they gave us answers that the head of the project said, well, that's absolutely wrong. They're wrong. They're not. They're going to have to do what we tell them to do, which is we're going to hire a bunch of COBOL programmers and we're going to go in and change all this, and that's how they're going to have to do it. They're just wrong. Well, as we know, what they did was replace everything with SAP and Oracle and everything else, and Ernst & Young went on to make $1 billion, despite the fact that we got it wrong. Now, so those were all innovative things, but the problem was it was about us and our idea, and we weren't either going to ask or listen, okay? And so for me, in professional services, innovation, to parrot what was just said, is all about what they say. And now, here's the bad news, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking about attorneys and their innovation, and the bitch is that we refuse to accept that that's what innovation is for us. Innovation for us is what I go, in January every year I go to my chairman, I say, tell me what's important to you this year. And he says, this, this, and this. He has just given me my map on which I can base any innovation that I'm going to do. And by the way, I will never, ever refer to it as innovation. I will come back and say, remember you wanted this? Here's what we can do to really raise the bar and make that fantastic. Okay? But it's always going to be their guidance.
well, I think it's got to be soft. I mean, for lawyers and law firms, we have to be talking in the context of soft innovation. Why? Because as lawyers, right, the business of what we do is, first of all, very much in the past. I mean, any litigator will tell you that they spend their whole day looking for precedent, looking for stuff that happened in the past, not about stuff that happened in the future. You still staple the thing in the same place that you've always stapled it. You go down to the same courthouse. I mean, so how do lawyers and law firms innovate? It's going to be soft innovation. In other words, it's going to be in the experience that the people who buy from you have. And those are the little ways that you actually can. So it's not oxymoronic to talk about law firms and innovation. You just have to get that it's not, we don't sell products, but we do sell an experience. And that is something that we can begin to shift that mindset around, I think.
Well, and if we just want to kill your panel questions altogether and go off track.
Feel free.
You know, we talked, when we prepared on the phone, we talked a lot about the behavioral change components, which I think your point really gets to, which is, okay, soft innovation really requires us, you know, tweaking behaviors and getting lawyers to behave differently in order to improve service delivery, in order to improve the value being provided. And that is a fundamental challenge, and I think we'll talk about that a little bit as we go forward, is really how do we orchestrate that soft innovation, that behavioral change.
We talked about, I'm going to go back to Alan, we talked about that in order to be in this space, in the listening of lawyers that are our clients, we have to really understand the skill set of knowing when we have an opportunity to ask good questions and get great information. Because this is really the kernel of it.
Yeah, Kristin just said it, teed it up. You know, once again, if we want them to be about innovation, which is what? Being different, right? We're going to have to be different. And so for us to have the same dialogue that we've been having for 10 or 15 years and thinking that that's going to yield innovative results, that's not going to work. You're going to have to figure out a different... So what do? Here's... All the innovation I know that I generate comes from asking three questions. I want to understand somebody's definition of success. What is going to be successful for you over the next 12, 18 months, 2 years? What is challenging that success? And what are you putting into place? Your solutions. What are you putting into place to address those challenges? Some derivation of that. That is an intimate conversation about themselves professionally, corporately, and that gives me, once again, a map to understand. Now, that is a different conversation, and let me assure you, you will be uncomfortable with that, and that should encourage you. That means you may have a chance of being innovative because you're having a different, innovative conversation. There's no other way to do it. It's kind of like this. I've got some experience with marriage. We don't need to go into that, but just hopefully you understand the code.
The first time was for practice, and now it's for real, right?
Thank you, David. You know, I'm probably not having the same damn conversations with my beloved today that I might have had 25 years ago. You know, it is a different day. I'm going to have to be comfortable with my discomfort about things and say, this is what love is, Alan, you stupid putz. You know, you're going to have to accept that and swallow it. And as mothers, you know, as parents, we have to deal with that all the time, right? But that's what, to me, that's the cutting edge here. The onus is not on can attorneys be innovative. The question is, can we be innovative? Because flavor of the month is what we've decided is innovative, and it's not. Differentiated relationships is what leads to innovation. That's enough.
It requires vulnerability.
Yeah.
Right.
Well said.
So when you're vulnerable
Well said.
is when you're going to create. That's what creation comes from. So part of it is certainly modeling that you're up to the fact that something maybe isn't perfect and being willing to experiment and fail. And I think, Nat, you know, you gave me a book a couple of years ago called Little Bits or Little Bites or something like that, which I return to again and again because there's a whole section about how Pixar, you know, one of the most innovative companies, I think we would all argue, has an entire division, albeit a small one, that is not concerned with any profit, but exists only to experiment. And so we obviously can't message that out to our partners, right? I'm just going to fail over here and experiment. But what you can do is kind of do it under the radar. But you have to get really vulnerable and in order to create that. And I think that you can, through asking questions, help your lawyers get vulnerable too. This is that acting out of the comfort
totally
zone.
Agree.
And it's about getting them in that space by themselves to figure out what are they afraid of? Because that's the only thing keeping them from being innovative. Or, you know, if you ask them, would you like your client to have a really great experience working with you? They don't say no, right? But they're never asked that question. They're just judged every day based on their cognitive ability to solve a problem, and somebody's looking at their numbers, right? Not asking them, what would it be like if this client had a great experience? Might they come back? Might they refer you? Might they become your champion or your super fan? And get at why they became lawyers in the first place. So I'm all about trying to like strip it all down. That to me is sort of how you're going to move that engine in a more innovative way towards innovation.
Yeah, I mean, we talked a little bit about this concept of how innovative companies in particular can cultivate innovation. So Pixar is a great example. There's a design firm in Palo Alto called IDEO. I don't know if you've ever seen press coverage on them. Obviously Google. But even larger companies, you know, my former employer Deloitte had an innovation program. And actually a number of law firms that I've worked with have had what they called incubator programs. And they truly do carve out resources where they attempt to incubate opportunities, opportunities to add value to their clients, to expand certain practices, to enter new practices, to do things differently. But I think we kind of have to go, those are kind of the big, nice ideas. We have to kind of bring it back to how do you do it in terms of your day-to-day life? How can you orchestrate innovation in, frankly, a fairly non-innovative industry? And I guess a couple of things I would just leave you with would be, I think that on the topic of cultivating innovation, the firms that we've talked about, some of the companies we've talked about, or even the law firms that have done it successfully, they seek to replicate innovation. That's part of the lifeblood of those organizations. And so when you look at the work that you're doing and working with attorneys, identifying ways that you can help produce innovation which will be sustainable and ongoing. So whether it's getting lawyers to talk to each other across practice areas that normally wouldn't talk to each other, across offices, and to share ideas, and to create an ongoing forum for that, so that this becomes this opportunity to cultivate innovation on an ongoing basis. They begin networking in a new way, and hopefully sharing information, because teamwork and knowledge sharing are two really critical components for innovation.